I mean, not saying that every single thing that you're doing should be automated today because it may not be done so often. But if you're doing this 5, 6, 7, 10 times, then likely this should be automated. And then you can start to force rank them to see what ultimately is going to have the most impact to you and create more capacity, more freedom, more space to be able to invest that time in higher value work that you're doing. Hey everyone. So most agency owners and agencies are still doing absolutely way too much manually. And it's actually quietly killing both their profitability and the passion that was once there in when they started their agency. So this goes from the creation of folders to invoicing to research and onboarding team members or onboarding clients. And the reality is that we have started to get to a place where we have normalized inefficiency or ineffectiveness. And now it's starting to catch up with us. So the truth is that manual work isn't just a productivity issue. It's a creativity killer. And so in this episode, Darren and I wanted to dig into the hidden costs of what doing things the hard way or the manual way, and what automation and now even potentially AI could have replaced a lot of these manual things a long time ago, and why continuing to just do it yourself and continue doing it the same way that you currently are is putting your agency and ultimately, even more importantly, your energy at a serious risk. I'm going to start with this kind of mindset that we have of that it's just part of the job, that this is just a normal kind of thing that happens. So there was a book I read relatively recently and on this season as well, Ben Gaddis, the book was called Embracing Irrationality. And the point of the book was that you need to start looking at, just because you're doing something this way doesn't mean that you should continue to do it this way. And that you have to start to think about things a bit more irrationally or unreasonably, if you will, to allow for you to be able to start to make a better world. And that's how I've approached so much of my life, frankly, is if the existing circumstances are not the way that I want them to be, the way that I have looked at it has always been, well, I'm going to create the world that I want rather than just letting the world happen to me. And if I had just let the world happen to me, I wouldn't have had the learning lessons that I've had. I wouldn't have had the successes that I've had. I wouldn't have done the things that I've done in my life and in my career. And the same is true for you, that if you have a circumstance in your world, in your business or in your personal life that you're unhappy with, the reality is assuming that it's not bound by the laws of physics, that you can change that. And one of the things that I found particularly useful with this idea of automation is actually taking your keyboard that's sitting right in front of you and just get rid of it for a day. And so there's loads of ways that you can input information into your computer that doesn't actually require a computer, right? Like you can take a microphone and actually articulate things. And so the idea behind this is that if you need to be able to communicate something, the point and most valuable piece is something that is in your head that needs to be translated into a machine. But if you are using a keyboard, that most often means that you're having to take information from one place in a computer to another place in a computer. And so if you're doing that, then that means that the likelihood is that that can be automated. Not saying that every single thing that you're doing should be automated today because it may not be done so often. But if you're doing this 5, 6, 7, 10 times, then likely this should be automated. And then you can start to force rank them to see what ultimately is going to have the most impact to you and create more capacity, more freedom, more space to be able to invest that time in higher value work that you're doing.
Yeah, I was thinking as you were saying it, no keyboard. What would I do without a keyboard? And then you start thinking of like creative ways to kind of work around. All right, so how could I do this with that constraint of like not using my keyboard? And you start getting creative of like different ways that things can actually move and flow. And I feel like that will open up different processes that you could ultimately come up with, right? I mean, I know, frankly, a lot of agencies are doing a lot of heavy manual processes, right? And it just comes from just them having always done it this way, right? And so there's things from like onboarding to, okay, cool. Now that we have this person onboarded, who sends out the contracts? Where do the contracts go? Where does the SOWs go? Where are the folders created? Where is all of these kind of like back end things that ultimately you have to have a checklist for? And if something is missing, or if it's not in the SOP, and if the person who's not normally here doesn't do it, it gets missed, and like it just becomes this whole rigmarole of time consuming, like mental space that is like in your mind that you're like, okay, I have to do all of these core things, versus it being automated and allowing for it to just flow. It's like, okay, cool, just click of a button, everything on the back end is going to get done. And so everything from like invoicing to like a lot of these processes that people are going through can be automated. And it's just, I think there needs to be that mindset shift, right? Of like what is actually possible, right? I know in the previous episodes we were talking about how like if you want to go to that next level, you have to be able to think outside of kind of where you're at currently, right? Take
Hmm.
on that new, do a little bit more, right? And sometimes not even more. Like I would argue 10 times out of 10, I am all for automation. I remember back when we had to reconcile books line by line. And
Hmm.
then I was like, oh, is there not a way that we could just, just take the bank information and just click off which ones are there? And then next thing you know, we had that API. And I was like, you know what? Life is good. This is 4 hours of my day back. I can work on higher tasks, higher thinking things, right?
100%. I mean, and I'm sure that the description of what Darren was saying has not happened for a single one of you listening today. The reality is that here's the circumstance that I find for most people is that we end up, for most of you listening, the likelihood is that you started your agency initially as a freelancer, kind of by accident, if you will. You ended up turning into an agency, ended up hiring team members. And so you had all of the responsibility as a freelancer to begin with. And then you hired team members and you ended up getting really busy. And so you ended up hiring more and you just didn't have the time to slow down to consider automation. And then you ended up hiring more people and ended up bringing on more clients. And then it just even became more. And then there was just more complexity, more
Mhm.
administrative work, more things to happen. And then you started to try to delegate things that ended up becoming incredibly difficult to delegate because there were so many little pieces. And then there was pieces that you didn't feel comfortable delegating. But the reality is that many of that you don't even necessarily need to delegate. So here's the like cascading component of it, right? Is that you are so incredibly busy and you're holding on to all these things. And then you started to delegate some of them because you just didn't have the capacity. So you started to delegate the overflow. And so you may even have team members that are doing some of this overflow work and now they are at capacity with this overflow work that you've given them. And so if you were to start to look at automation, you're freeing up your time and then freeing up other team members' time. And then the work that you have that you still can delegate that is of actual human necessity, then you're able to create a whole lot of capacity across your entire org. The other thing that I just want to point out here, right, is that you have technological advancement and then you have this like delay in implementation. And so the reality is that there's so many of you, right now that are in this delayed automation implementation phase. Zapier, as an example, has been around forever. And the amount of people that I come across that don't know how to use what, in my view, and mind you, I'm a techie nerd, so asterisk there, is that I find it to be incredibly simple to use. And with a couple of clicks, you can actually automate a whole lot of things in a very what would sound complicated actually isn't. And I'm wanting to create more leverage for you so that you can actually do the things that you started your business for. The reason why you chose this vocation or this career because you enjoyed the creative output, that you enjoyed the creative inspiration, but instead you've been relegated to doing these like little onesie twosie tasks that end up just like slowly chipping away at your soul. And then there's so many instances where I come across agency owners. And in fact, one that I met with for coffee yesterday, she was talking about the fact that she was like starting to feel like that light dim. And a lot of it had to do with these types of things, right? Where there's like these little components that are taking her away from the thing that actually fills her cup up and makes her excited. So as a founder, you did not start your agency to become this like file mover, human inbox, if you will. And these like manual chips are like really causing a whole lot of negative impact for you.
You know what it is? I think that everybody likes that feeling of being needed, like being that responsible party, being that person who is like everybody comes to. But ultimately, I mean, that's draining at a certain point, right? And so it is going to eventually just wear you down, right? And also I mean, even from like my perspective of like, there is a love that you have for that responsibility, and then just a hate and a disdain for actually doing the task, actually doing the work, right? And so instead of building out or taking that time to build out that process to allow for you to, like I said, work on higher level things, higher level thinking things, right? Things that actually require your creativity, like you're saying, things that actually bring out and reignite that light and give you the time and the space, the mental capacity to be able to work on those activities that you thoroughly enjoy versus, creating yourself an admin job of all these moving X to B and, all of these kind of like what feels unnecessary, but is always like really necessary. And I hate that sometimes, where it's just like it's just this little thing messed up the whole chain of events down the line, right? If you didn't save this one file right and somebody can't find it, and that because that person can't find it, we pushed a deadline. Because we pushed the deadline, we can't invoice. Because we can't invoice, we can't get everybody paid on payroll. Like that little step in the chain can have such a large effect, but it feels so insignificant at the time, right? But it's like making sure that that stuff, one, doesn't get missed because computers never sleep. But if it does, it's easier for you to catch instead of like one thing, instead of millions of or the a bunch of different tasks that you've piled on and you now are burning yourself out.
I think it's funny that you went to file naming because I think that Darren has a bit of my anal retentiveness when it comes to file naming.
And PTSD from not naming something right.
The thing that I think that's really important, I want you just to listening right now, I want you to close your eyes, assuming you're not driving. I want you to close your eyes and I want you to picture a world where you have eliminated those little administrative things on your plate. And so all of that piece of your life, of your job, are gone, from needing to save files, to create folders, to send out invoices, to do all these little onesie twosie things that could just be, 15 or 20 tasks in a day, but maybe you're 30, 45 minutes, even an hour, that are a huge amount of time over the course of the year, right? An entire more than a week and a half to 2 weeks worth of administrative work per year that you can get back. That's an entire vacation of time that you can get back. And the amount of impact that that has to you. Like, I just want you to think about that for a second and just feel how much that actually has impact to not your soul, but just the amount of energy that you think about in your business. I mean, at least in my viewpoint is, and this may sound a bit woo-woo, and I'm Californian, so there's a bit of woo-woo in me, but I'm not that woo-woo of a person. The reality is that the more excitement, and there's a load of conversation around the idea of burnout, and burnout is a real thing. But I actually find in my own experience is that burnout predominantly becomes a thing when you are not focusing on the right things. So if you're focusing on the things that actually give you energy and are making you excited, your cup is constantly being refilled with more energy. And I've joked with clients in the past that if I had just an infinite number of hours, like I enjoy what I do, I could spend the time doing, assuming that I'm not doing administrative things that are making me hate my life. And the same is true for you. And the more energy you have, the more excitement, the more passion that you're putting into the work. So the greater creative that's going to come out of it, and the greater momentum that you're going to have as well. So that energy just naturally propels you forward and actually creates for greater growth. And so it actually does really, truly compound in a meaningful way, removing things like the creative fatigue and resentment that we often feel. Darren also mentioned this idea that it is that we enjoy being needed. And I mean, that like truly resonates with me. I mean, we all, I think, need it. And I've had this like evolving component where I have needed to try to remove these pieces of my identity that of this like need to be needed component, because it has a significant dynamic of how it is that we do and put things in. The reality of the concept, and I hear this, if not every day, at least several times a week, of I do not have time. But if you automated things, and if you are saying this, sure, this is all great in concept, but I don't have time to sit down and create these automation. Don't look at, I have to create 100 different automations, or I'm not technical and I don't understand these types of things. I mean, the reality is that there's YouTube University, there's ChatGPT that'll tell you step by step exactly what to do. And even with Zapier, let's say that you're just using Zapier as an automation tool, right? And you're not doing it within a platform. They have just an AI written thing of just phonetically writing out exactly what it is you're looking to do. And it actually just sets up the full workflow for you. Not saying that it works every time. It hasn't, but it actually does get you pretty close to it. And if you automate something once and then create the capacity. So let's say that, all right, I'm going to have to spend an hour to automate one thing. But I know that this one thing is going to save me 2 hours a week in perpetuity. So now that you have those 2 hours a week, now take those 2 hours a week, and then the following week that you've saved those 2 hours, you're now able to take and then automate two more things. And then now you've saved more time and continuing to do it and repeat. And eventually you've eliminated a lot of these things. And there's hundreds of tools now that you're able to do and have team members overseas that do this really well as well, that you can hire on Upwork or what have you to do low cost implementation of these types of things.
Yeah, and I think one thing that people don't consider as well is that all the agencies I talk to are trying to scale, right? So they're trying to scale. It's like, okay, cool. You understand that if you're trying to scale without the additional capacity, you're going to have to do more of these administrative tasks, right? Or it's going to fall onto somebody else on your team, right? Imagine you're paying a high skilled designer to do, low skill tasks, right? And so now they're not utilizing their abilities, their utilization time for something that is profit producing, instead of it's going to be something that is taking away the time, the talent that they have in these low skill activities, right? That you can have an AI agent do, that you can have Zapier integration for, that you can have, all these little tools that are typically now, I feel like AI has been starting to be ingrained in everything, and they're trying to like push you more towards utilizing it, right? And so
Yep.
just not embracing that and not understanding the true cost of what not having these implementations or these operational leverages implemented into your systems is eating away at the money that you can be spending on those vacations, that you could be hiring more skilled designers, that you can be utilized to reinvest into your company and to your team.
The viewpoint that I have, right, and kind of what Darren's alluding to, I suppose, a degree, is this idea of waste elimination, which is like just a core principle of mine as a finance Excel brained person. That how is it that we go about removing as much waste as we can? And so my thought point here is not about replacing people. And that's one of the things that I see as like a fear point, especially as we get into the conversation about AI, this idea that people are going to be replaced. And my viewpoint is, how do I remove wasted time, wasted energy so that people can do their best work? I was actually having a conversation with the same person I mentioned earlier for coffee yesterday. And we were talking about the fact that, like, my viewpoint in it is that every single moment that a strategist is spending time not thinking about strategy, every single moment that a designer is spending not designing or developing relationships internally or with clients, then it's wasted time. And how do we eliminate that? It also is wasted energy. So how do we remove all of those pieces that they're not enjoying? And so now I want you to take that a little bit of a layer further. So, and I'm not saying this to make any of you feel bad, but I want to have, and it's a bit of a harsh reality, is that for those of you that have not automated loads of things within your org right now, we're now going into the AI era, if you will. And there's loads of basic automations that are so incredibly important and just like very foundational table stakes. And if you haven't automated these things yet, you're already behind, because now we're getting into much more higher functioning automation things. And I really fundamentally do not believe that AI can do the human component, especially when it comes to this industry, because it's very empathetic. It's not only just subjective, but the creative component, it just isn't there. And so, but it is an incredible data synthesizer, an incredible data synthesizer. And that effectively, in my viewpoint, is akin to automation. And so if you haven't done the prior version of automation, just information from one location to another and just doing tasks, these very manual tasks, you are already backfooted today. And so going into what is going to be a very rapid progression, very rapid progression. I mean, just thinking the past couple of years of how much has progressed from AI, from me playing with it in the middle of the night when I was living in the UK to where it is now and how much it is being utilized and leveraged every single day is meaningfully different. And you don't need to be the first. And with automation, you aren't. And you also do not need to be the first when it comes to AI, but please do not be the last.
Yes, definitely. Do not be last. And I think there's even a step before that. It's just making sure that your data is clean. Like that
Yeah.
is going to help you tremendously, right? Just that clean data or data hygiene, however you want to call it, like that is going to be a tremendous first step. And then moving on to how easily it is to integrate different things and automate different things because there is a step-by-step function that you could put into place for that. And then as well, yes, make sure that you are also playing with it, getting to know AI because it's worldwide news at this point, right? And so everybody's hearing about it. Your A plus team members are hearing about it. They want to play with it. They want to use it. The team members are understanding that, hey, if I'm at an agency and we're not utilizing AI, then we're effectively slowly decaying, right?
Yep.
We're going to be left behind, right? And so it's like, okay, now is it my time to level up to another agency who is utilizing, who is going to help me further advance my career? Like people know that it's there, right? And
Hmm.
people want to use
And if they
it,
don't,
and
that's even more scary.
exactly, right? And so nobody wants to stay where they feel like they're stagnant or stuck, right? One of Robert's fears is being stagnant and stuck, right? And so I feel like mine is as well. It's just like, hey, I need to go somewhere where things are happening
That sharks
and
and
I'm doing
heights, but
things.
the one of the things that I see is like an important thing too that just like from a like incredibly practical perspective here is that when you're doing things manual, and as much as I hate to admit I'm human as well, which means that I'm error prone and I can do things inconsistently and I just don't feel like doing that right now. And well, until AI becomes self-aware, I guess it's not going to be complaining, right? Like it's just going to do the thing that you've asked it to do. And not saying that there aren't inconsistencies sometimes and like errors that will happen with automation because there are, but there's blockades and there's ways to catch those things pretty easily. And I don't see a great agency growing by just doing more of the same. They grow by removing bottlenecks and becoming the next version of themselves. And I see manual work as just one of these bottlenecks. And it's one that people really don't talk about as much. And I think that it's just incredibly vital. And if you are looking at a world right now where you haven't really leaned into AI, you haven't leaned into automation, this is a great way to get started in the kiddie pool, frankly. It's a great way to get going in a way that's not too risky. The barrier of entry is pretty low. I mean, I want to say it's like what, $20 or $40 or something for the Zapier subscription. They even have a free trial one that you can go and do it and just play with it. Take an hour this week and go play to see what's possible and see that there's opportunity here, an incredible amount of opportunity. And then one of the things that I think is really important is just try to think about like what is even possible. Like taking back to what I was suggesting earlier in the episode was this non-keyboard day so that you can start to creatively look at how do I create this constraint, which is me just being me, this creative mind that is able to produce work and work with clients, build relationships, and less of a machine, really.
Yeah, I definitely always recommend starting small. I feel like it's a slippery slope and it's a good slippery slope, right? When you start small, it's like, oh, okay, cool. Let me see if I can have it do X, Y, Z for me. Next thing you know, you're like, you're doing something. You're like, okay, this is the fourth time this week I've done this. You know what? Let me think it. Oh, that Zapier thing. Let me see if I can try and have it do this for me. And you're like, oh, it can. Cool, that's off my plate. And then you just kind of slowly progress and build, and it just kind of compounds. And then realistically, this isn't just ops talk, right? This is a growth strategy because the more time you free up, the more time you have to do revenue generating activities, free up your team to do revenue generating activities, and ultimately, push your agency to greater heights.
And frankly, if you're still doing repetitive tasks manually in 2026, that's a choice. And it's one that's costing you more than you really realize. And if it's not automated, it's not outsourced, it's not templated, it's stealing your time and your potential so that you can actually have meaningful, sustainable growth. Your job as a founder is not to do all the things. It's to build the machine that is able to produce the work that you're looking for, to be able to grow beyond you for most of you. And when you finally get there, things really do start to change. You start to have the freedom that you were looking for, that space that you're looking for. And that's what we want for you. Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening in today. With all of the shifts in the industry, it is easy to feel overwhelmed or unsure of your next move. So I'm not here to try to sell you anything. I just want to give back and guide you through the uncertainty. Whether you're navigating new trends or just need some clarity, we're here to listen and offer advice. Head to creativeagencysuccess.com/chat to book a free 15-minute chat with an agency mentor who can provide you with a fresh perspective. Let's figure out the best steps for your agency's growth together.